How's life?
Man, life is weird, man. It's like I can't even imagine what it must be like to be in New York right now. Stuck in New York of all places.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys? Damn the delay on this thing. Have you guys? I haven't seen much info on Australia at all.
I mean, they're keeping pretty quiet over here in terms of like, I guess, letting things out. But thankfully, our outbreak numbers aren't too crazy right now. But they're crazy enough for like how many people live here. But we're all basically locked down in every state. Yeah, it sucks.
It's insane.
But
I mean,
it's looking to be like a year, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to be optimistic, but I'm not.
Yeah, no. I've set my expectations for 12 months. Like, this is going to be life for 12 months until. I just don't think of anything's going to change until a vaccine is made. There's no possible way to like really, I don't know, do anything like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, like vaccine. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, that's at least 18 months from now.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the thing. Like, even if someone started when they first figured out that this thing was a virus, like back in November or wherever. Like, if they'd started then and found the solution or the underlying cause and were able to, like, go, like, oh, this treats it, then it's, like, 18 months from there of, like, testing on people to make it, like, globally certified safe to use as a fix, so...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then the rich first, right?
I was watching.
Who's the virus is hitting harder? The poor people, of course. And who's going to get the vaccine first? The rich ones who are not affected as badly as the poor ones. So
exactly. I loved the thing on, like, it was Seth Meyers or like Jimmy Kimmel or something like that said, like, if you're poor and you need to get a test, just cough on a rich person to find out whether you have it.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I mean, it's like the bars, at least, it seems like they can. I mean, I ordered from the bar I used to DJ at. You know, I ordered some drinks from there to support, and, you know, and they deliver it. I mean, at least they can do that. They have to lay off people, but they can still keep the business going a bit because everybody's going to need alcohol or food, you know, stuff like that. But when it comes to live shows, when is that? I mean, I think we're probably lucky if we can play, if MDF and NDF and all those, you know, and all the festivals and venues are going to be open in a year from now.
You'll be super lucky if that happens. I just feel like they're not going to let anyone go back out just in case it spreads through everyone again, because there's no way to stop it. Like, it's not like everyone would have to, like, with your ticket, you'd have to also, like, show that you got, like, the vaccine.
Yeah, right. I mean, and then another blow is going to be, like, you know, the postal service right now.
Yeah.
Not like, very few flights go across the Atlantic from, like, let's say Europe to the US. I don't know how it is in Australia, but
yeah,
you know, USPS is also on its, like, last legs right now.
Yeah,
it might go bankrupt.
Holy shit!
Cut off.
Holy
which
shit.
Means that I talked to our merch company. You know, it's like, this is the only way we could make some money. And that's only going to be for a little while more until people are, like, out of cash, right? So
yeah.
Apparently what happened was that the Scandinavian Airlines, they stopped their flights, and they carried a lot of mail from Scandinavia over here. And now they're not doing that. So the other ones like TNT and, you know, DHL, you know, they have to raise their prices now.
Oh, my God.
So now, yeah, I had a friend who was like, he was asking me, he was like, I found this DVD with a horror movie that was like, I've been looking for it my whole life, but it was going to cost me $450. The actual DVD was like $25. But with freight, it was $450. He was like, "Is this really true?" I was like, "Probably is," because
wow, they've raised that price that much.
Yeah, they put like my merch guy. He told me that like all the bigger freight companies are like every kilo that they are gonna put on a plane is like raised with like up to €4 per kilo.
Oh my god.
So you can imagine if you have a couple of tons of mail going out.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fucking money.
It was funny yesterday. I saw Death Wish Records post something along the lines of if you've ordered a package or something, or like some merch recently from a band or us or any label or wherever, and you're complaining because you haven't got it in the regular amount of time, fuck you. I was like, yes, that's so awesome. It's like, man, everything's a fucking mess right now. Just like calm the fuck down. So
I know, right? I know. It's like how is this gonna fucking work from now on? I don't get it. Yeah, exactly. It's like, what do you say to that?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Like, what do you think about death metal dance? Like, fuck, I don't know, dude.
Yeah, name a few, and I'll let you know.
Yeah,
like,
I just
even that is not.
The people who do that stuff, they have to know too. It's like, dude, everyone just listens to the bands that they grew up with. Like, you'll forever listen to Iron Maiden, Autopsy. You know, I'll forever listen to Dismember, Entombed, and Metallica, and Thin Lizzy. You know, it's like these questions about like keeping up. Like, no one besides like Fenriz and some other people keep up with like extreme metal. It's just not doable. You'd have to be like a serial killer.
Yeah, right.
The last thing I want to do, for the most part, is listen to extreme metal. I would rather listen to like some classic rock or like some hip hop or something. That's that question sucks.
No, but I mean, it's like if I listen to extreme, but if it's not good pretty early on, I'm gonna be like,
yeah, and that's it. Like all the stuff that you work on in terms of extreme that like comes out recently. I mean, the Morbus Crom thing that you worked on, I forget how you actually say that title. Is it
Sweden?
Yeah. That was super awesome. That was so interesting. So I remember like putting it on and going just like, wow, this is fucking awesome. So, and to see
it's great, but you know what? With that recording, the interesting part was that like Robert came in with like we did the EP first, worked fine, but once they started recording that album and got into the studio, he was already like in the kind of mindset of he knew exactly how we wanted it.
Right.
So he was basically the producer, but me and him didn't agree on everything.
Right.
Which is fine. Which I think it's a good
totally
thing because when I hear their music, I want it to be a certain way. I think the album turned out great, but he also took like the recordings we did. He took it and then he, sat with it for a long time and learned himself more or less. I mean, he had some schooling in it, which I don't really care about. But he sat with it for a long time, and it came out great.
Yeah.
The way he wanted it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's like that's one of the cool points that everyone should know about, like people like you, and even like Robert Person. Like you guys aren't trained in this shit at all, but like it's freakish how good you guys are at it. It's like I got friends who've been through like colleges and stuff for like audio training and all that sort of shit, and they cannot. They just don't get it over the line. And you guys are all like freaks, and even Nick's like a freak too at at it. Like the drum tones that you guys get, and the depth of production, it's incredible. Like seeing your name on like the liner notes for the Ever-Flowing Stream album, and comparing everyone else's like output, even from that early point, it's like you clearly had an idea of like how, in almost like a Dr. Dre way, how to like fatten the sound even more than the bands that, you know, were currently in that same studio at Sunlight. So I still like listen to the other records, and they don't have the sound that Ever-Flowing Stream has. It's just crazy how.
Yeah, but you know, even at that short time of recording, like 12 days with mixing or anything, I mean, it's more like when you have something that you believe in and how you want it to be portrayed sound-wise, you have to go all in.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's good. Like, for instance, the Morbus Crohn last album, we didn't agree. You know, he didn't think he was a step ahead of me because it's his music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I wasn't really ready to compromise because I loved it, but I wanted it to sound a little bit different than him. And good for him that he stood his ground and he took it and mixed it and put whatever on that he wanted to, which was also cheaper because they had to hire me and the studio.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in that sense, it's better for him to get all his points across by doing it for a couple more months at home if he can.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And learn as he goes, you know, until he's happy.
Yeah.
He would have been able to spend way less time in my studio with me, and we would be fighting over things that we couldn't agree on.
Yeah. So absolutely.
That's a perfect, like, I don't mind that. I think it's great, you know, and I think for his sake, you know, I could always be like, well, I don't, you know, because that's my opinion as a producer or an engineer, but he had his opinion. So that was the best solution for them, you know, and for him.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's the same thing, like what we did in the early days. Like, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted, and me and Thomas, we could agree, but sometimes we didn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes he pushed his opinion through. Mostly we agreed, and sometimes it was with the band that they wouldn't agree or whatever. I would always drive my point through no matter what. You know. But just because I thought I had a clearer vision. And then in later recordings, the other guys are like, right, you know, because they had a longer learning curve. I was there already, you know, when I pushed my things through like a fucking dictator, but hey, that's how it goes.
I mean, sometimes if you get the clearest vision out of everyone, you have to run with it. And the one thing that I've seen across the board is sometimes you have to be a dictator to get where you need to go, or someone has to be a dictator to get where you need to go, because the democracy route doesn't get the results that you need.
Yeah, true.
Which is,
sometimes it works,
yeah,
but not always.
Not always, and then everyone's vision of like utopia is completely different too. So, have you been in any form of studio doing anything in particular, or are you just like jamming and getting Dismember stuff ready?
You know, it's like I'm writing a lot right now, especially since the lockdown. But before that, I have a go-to studio in Hoboken.
Oh, cool.
It's the Moonlight Mile recording, and this guy, he's Mike. He's super nice, and you know, it's in an old kind of shoe factory building that they cannot tear down, even though the city wants to.
Right.
So he's safe there. So no, I did, you know, Henry's band, Impure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I produced that one last year in that studio, and then I did like recently I did like a song. I did a cover that I changed a lot. Tom Petty's "American Woman." American Girl. I mean, I you know, this guy who did the Dismember beer for our reunion shows.
Yeah.
So he had this long-standing kind of like beer release thing. So he released a lot of beers that he made in Sweden, and then he wanted me to do the soundtrack for the last beer they ever did. So I did a cover on that Tom Petty song, and I just changed the whole thing, so turned it more into kind of a Motorhead.
The last beer that they're gonna do.
Yeah, so I played everything myself, recorded everything myself. You know, it was like a 3-day job, but it went fine. You know, and I like that studio. It's a nice studio.
Do you get to like go hang out and do whatever you want there, or like is it like as you sort of mess about in there you have to pay for it, or?
Well, I have to pay rent, but he gives me a really good price. So.
Right, that's awesome. So basically, you just work out like timing, and then you slot whatever you're doing in. That's cool. That's so cool. And especially like nice. Hoboken, like that would be like far cheaper to manage than anything. In
I mean, I don't think there are not many studios left in Manhattan anymore.
Not many, like, you know, almost like do-it-yourself studios. They're all like very high-end. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple in Brooklyn, but some of them I've been to, and they're like, not. You know. I'm kind of like. Did you end up bringing any of your stuff over from Sweden?
I mean, no. I mean, not really.
Like,
you know, we don't have a lot of space. I mean, I have this kit.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
I bought that to practice before the reunion show. Yeah. So, and a friend brought the guitar over, and I got this little guy not too long ago.
Is that little tiny Terry?
Yeah. No, it's actually a 20-watt orange. Yeah, the Crush one.
Cool.
So,
what type of guitar? I mean, is that a Gibson?
No, it's a Bernie.
Oh, sweet.
So it's like late 70s or early 80s Bernie.
Those rule. That makes me want to go get one of those now. Because, you know, the $500.
They're a little bit... The problem with this one is, like, you can't tune it down too much.
Really?
Because it's kind of like... Yeah, you know, it's been... I think this neck has been kind of violated back in the day, but this guy in Sweden, this really good guitar repair guy, fixed it before I bought it. So I bought it real cheap. But it's kind of like, if you want to tune down like kind of Dismember way.
Yeah, the truss rod might not be the best.
Exactly. And I'm not much of a guitar tech, you know, so I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe I'll jump on Facebook video sometime and help you do that, because I seem to have like a pretty good knack at like getting truss rods that are crazy.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I can balance them, but hopefully someone hasn't over tightened it too much.
I know, and it's like, but apart from that, I love this. I mean, it sounds good. It's easy to play. You know, it's like all I need.
That's so awesome. So I guess we should dive into some questions, man.
Sure. I'm just gonna check. Oh yeah, I can actually.
Oh, look at that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm like, you know, sometimes you're like, can you do that or not? I don't have a real good computer here, so.
That's cool. I guess we should start like closer to the start. We'll see how it goes, but I think people are always like intrigued of like your sort of like initial stages as a teenager. I think you were at like the same high school as Nick. And, it's funny because you guys apparently became like super good friends, but you guys went completely off into different bands, which kind of blows my mind that you didn't join forces in the same band, I guess.
Yeah, you know, it's like we were in the same band like early on, because when I met him and Kenny, they were they were playing punk rock, and I was a metal kid, more or less, so we tried to, we kind of, I was the only kid in school that was into heavier music.
Yeah.
And and they too, and we, I played a little bit of guitar, and they played guitar, drums, and all that, so we tried to, I joined their band, more or less.
Yeah.
Sort of like punk rock, but then we started like listening to. I mean, we were all listening to Motorhead and Black Sabbath, but I listened to Metallica. They listened a little bit to Venom, I guess, and we kind of mashed everything up. They showed me a lot of punk rock I didn't know about. I knew no one at that time who were into punk rock music at all.
Right.
But once we got to know each other, then we started, like record hunting for like more extreme music all the time. So for a couple of years there, we didn't play that much, or we all played a little bit, but by 88, when Nihilist in 87, when they started playing together, they sometimes rehearsed in my parents' basement.
Oh wow!
And I would still jam with Nick. It's like. We would still jam, but he started that band and brought in LG and Uffe, and then it was kind of they were kind of a tight unit, and they did great. And I think it's also, at that age, you're kind of like, you're not fast to like move in between a lot of stuff, but sometimes it's like if something doesn't really fit instantly, you're pretty restless, and
yeah.
Or we were, at least, like we wanted things to happen quickly, and Nick he's very restless and very productive, so he's always been like, all right, let's record a demo. I got the songs, let's do it. Rehearse, record, let's get this out and all that. But we were still hanging out. But when Nihilist started, I felt like, well, I'm going to start my own band, because me and Nick are also like, we're kind of similar in many ways, so I think it's a good thing maybe that we didn't play too much together then, because maybe we would have butted heads more.
Yeah.
And since we didn't, I had my band, he had his band. It was easier to be like, well, he could help us out, which he always did. If it came to like logos or artwork or even, like just helping out playing bass because we didn't have a bass player or whatever. That was a good thing for us. I mean, he wouldn't mind, at all, at any time. So,
and
that was great.
That's pretty amazing, because he recorded like, I guess most of the solos on the first Dismember record.
Yeah, he did.
And was that for any particular reason?
Time crunch. We wanted to get an album out. We had a record deal. And that's me again being like very restless. I know that, like David's never going to be happy of him not playing all the leads, but then again, he had a lot of, he played guitar, some of the bass, he did a lot, and he's always been kind of the guy who musically is like, I mean, me and him, Matti, he's a vocalist, but, lyrics are written kind of later in the game.
Yeah.
Usually.
Absolutely.
So so it was me and David, and I mean, he had to take on a pretty big burden, so
yeah.
It was just like a thing that, we need some leads on this, so I was just like, Nick, can you do it? He was like, yeah, sure, I would love to. That would be a lot of fun. He came in and put those leads down during an evening, in the studio.
Wow. So before that, you didn't have any leads actually planned in those songs, per se?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And it was also like, the songs weren't really written to have leads, because we only had like one guitar player. I mean, Robert was in the band, but it was also, I don't think people realize that like Robert and Richard, they joined the band kind of just before we recorded the album.
Oh.
So we didn't really have a lot of time to rehearse, all of us. So me, Matti, and David had rehearsed for a long time and started, writing songs and everything. Robert was in Unleashed, Richard was doing Unanimated and other stuff too. So it was kind of weird in that sense that we had most of the material done. I had already booked the studio. And then you have two guys who haven't been able to play the songs that much in rehearsal space. So it was kind of like, well, we have to get this done now. We don't want to be like the last band coming out of Stockholm, with our first album. And there you go again. It's like, I don't know if it's good or bad, but sometimes, not only timing, but just the sheer kind of like restlessness and like the goal set that you have already. You want to release an album, we have a record deal, we want to release an album, get on tour.
And that's amazing that I don't know if that information is out there, because as we nerds read like metal archives and stuff like that, we just see like a fully formed lineup written, and that for some reason there's like Nicke Andersson plays guitar solos on all the songs, and we're just like, okay. But I mean, it turned out as an awesome product, and I don't feel like David should feel any sort of too sad about it, because all of his lead work from there on in was incredible. Like I still try and there's a note choice that he uses that is so unique in like the melodic aspect that I'm still trying to like figure out how he does it, because it's just the way that he plays a certain few notes in a row sounds so Swedish that I love the sound of it, and it just comes through in the solos in Dreaming in Red, and he should be very happy.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, it's like, it kind of sucked for him then, but also I think maybe that it wasn't a bad thing per se, because I mean, come on, the guy's not only a great like lead guitar player, but I mean his rhythm guitar work is very important. I mean, without that, we wouldn't have a sound. So
absolutely,
I think it maybe it was also good in the sense that he felt like, all right, now I have to fucking get better at doing this, and he did, and that has shaped our sound after that. So
absolutely, man, that's. I can't even like picture what the world would be like, because I feel like Entombed they did the first two records, which were incredible like death metal masterpieces, and then they went very left, and you guys have always been like Slayer. You know what you're gonna get. You're gonna get Iron Maiden Autopsy.
Yeah, exactly.
with the chainsaw sound through it, and always like a keen sense of melody within. It's not just like being beaten over the head with a club. There's like dynamics and there's intricacies within. So it's always awesome. But I think one of the one things that people probably maybe don't know that much about is like early in the game, like you guys had Carnage going, and Carnage obviously was much more how Dismember turned out, but Dismember in and of itself was like a completely other band for a while that was like much more brutal. The demo tapes are just like completely different to like what Dismember ended up turning into once Carnage sort of dissolved.
Yeah, I think we were like, we all loved Autopsy, right? So
yeah,
and and Slayer, and Motorhead, and Death, Possessed, like Dark Angel. I mean that all kind of, we wanted to mash that up in a way that we liked, and to put some hooks in there, but still have the sheer brutality of it. And I mean, Matti is also like, he's a singer, but he has a lot of impact on the riffs and the music too. He writes, but he's funny in the way of writing music, because he's like, here's a riff, and we're like not really understanding it sometimes. It sounds kind of autopsy-like, but we're like, I don't get like what's the rhythm here, and then we kind of like transform it sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just like, all right, like Bleed for Me. That's more or less him.
He wrote Bleed for Me?
Yeah, most of it. Like he came up with like the whole start of that song was him. You know, wow. So yeah, so you know he has that thing, but sometimes he's just like, here's a riff and like do whatever you want with it. And then me and David would go over it and kind of like, well, I think we should play it like this, or we try it out, and then it turns into something different a little bit, but it's still there. You know, the essence is there, but because he has some really like unique ways of writing, probably because he doesn't play much guitar, or any instrument.
Yeah,
that kind of gives you a weird kind of angle. Like
it really does.
It turns into something completely. I would never come up with it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. That I see, and there's another hidden facet that no one probably knew that Matty writes.
Oh, he does. All right. No, always. Like he's always been writing stuff throughout our career. I want to put it that way, but it's just like you know, we've been playing for a long while together, but it's like you know what he's gonna do. Now we know what David's going to do, what I'm going to do, Robert, Richard, you know, everybody has their own style kind of that we kind of tried to make coherent within the band structure.
Yeah.
Writing songs.
That's really cool. In terms of like when Carnage basically sort of came apart and it turned back into Dismember, was there much behind that? I know that, you know, the lineup was very different, and a certain person went on to be a Swedish household name. Well,
you know, Carnage, I mean, that was a completely different band before we recorded the album. Because you had different members and everything, but they lived in a very small town, a couple of hours from Stockholm, right? So when I joined Carnage, I moved down there for a couple of weeks, but I couldn't find a job because it was a shithole town.
Yeah.
And we couldn't really rehearse down there because it was a shithole town. So I was like, all right, this is not going anywhere. And I'm, you know, again, very restless. And Michael too, you know, and he's older than me. So he was like, I got a deal already. I got a record deal with Earache or Necrosis, you know, like he knew the guys from Carcass. I mean, back then you couldn't call people. You did, you know, you tape traded or everything. But he had, you know, family in England, so he knew these guys. I mean, that was a pretty big thing for us, you know. He knows the guys in Carcass. So, you know, we met them when they played in Stockholm once before that. And he was like, no, but I know them and they can get us a deal. I was like, all right, it's not working out down here in this little shithole town. Let's move to Stockholm. I have a job. I'll give you a job. We have a studio that we can book, you know. Let's book the same studio as Entomb. So he came with me to Stockholm.
That's amazing.
And the other guys, like Johnny and Johan, they were like, well, we can't really move. You know, we have jobs down here and everything. We can't just turn everything upside down and just move. And if this is not working, how are we going to live, you know?
Yeah.
So Michael stayed with my parents and me in our house for a while and worked at my day job. And I just booked the studio, and the other guys came up from the town they lived in, which is Växjö, which is a pretty small town in southern part of Sweden, but they couldn't really commit because they couldn't take off from work and all that. Johnny, he could do so more than Johan at the time. So me and Michael were like, we were very like on the same page. We were like, all right, we're just gonna do this. Like, we're gonna record this album. We're gonna get it out. We're gonna get on tour, and all that, you know. So we were starting to think like, what are we gonna do about this? How are we gonna solve this? Because we probably cannot keep all the members in the band and all that. So we more or less just, you know, I was like, well, I'm gonna talk to David, and he was, you know, he was in Entomb playing bass at the time.
Yeah.
after the first demo they released. So he was like, and then they had the album coming out that summer. He was not on the album or anything, but he joined them. He was going to play bass. I talked to him. I was like, do you really want to play bass in a band when you're a guitar player? It was kind of sneaky, but it was also kind of like, we weren't that many people, in that scene at the time who were on the same page. So I was like, do you really want to do that? Don't you want to, play guitar in Carnage instead? And he was like, well, I got to think about it. But he was like, all right, I'm on board. And then Matti was like, he was in Carbonized, and, we were like, we got a record deal. Come sing for us instead, And he was like, all right, let's do it. And then we just recorded everything, like, and we had to use some old Dismember songs because we didn't have enough songs.
Yeah. That's amazing. All the stuff's coming out, because that makes entirely perfect sense why you and Nick would definitely not have ever probably worked well, especially at that time in a band, because you're the man with the plan, he's the man with the plan, and like you're both prolific, I guess, like organizers of things, like, and so having both of those personalities in one band would probably not be the greatest conducive thing towards the goal.
Yeah, I have this like opinion that might not always be true, but especially when you start a band, if you're two people instead of one trying to be the captain, even though you're good friends, I don't think it would always work, because obviously he's way more talented than me when it comes to playing, instruments, and that's fine. He could show me, which he did. He's the one who taught me to play drums, or
wow.
like we would always sit around. We would go and do drum jams, and he would be like, "Whoa, try this," or like we would sit at his place and play guitars together, and exchange riffs and stuff like that. So that's not the thing, but it's more like in the heat of the moment when you're like, we'll play it like this, Why don't you understand how I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Then you have to be a different kind of person, I think.
Yeah.
I would probably I would be a resistance to that, which is not a good thing, because I would be like, well, we'll play my riff like this then, especially when you're young. You can't really. You feel like you have to stand your ground, and there's so many like issues that are kind of childish when you're this old, pushing 50. That you'd be like, well, why wouldn't I think different about that? But it's not that easy. Sometimes I see it even with older bands like that I work for doing sound or whatever. It's like you can tell that some people who are butting heads too much, maybe they want too much, both of them, and it's not being productive for the sake of the band.
It's always about personal chemistry, man, and the more that the more that people in bands can understand that and sort of like navigate that in nice ways, the sooner you get to like a better goal.
Yeah, and also like I'm kind of grateful in a way that we didn't, because imagine if we were in the same band and then we would get into a position where we would not like each other because of
that's
wanting the same thing but not working it out within a band structure.
Imagine like headlines saying like Fred and Nick like exchange bad words against each other because of like an album they recorded in like 92.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He's ripping me off or blah 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 blah, all that sort of nonsense that happens, and like it's just good that you guys had your own separate like piece of the cake in whatever ways that you guys did. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah, that worked out for the best.
Yeah, and you guys also have had like one of the most faceted, like interesting relationships too, because not only were you guys like really good at like bouncing off like musical ideas and stuff like that with each other, but you've gone on to like have like such a strong presence in recording a lot of like Helicopters and Imperial State Electric stuff, and you've always just sort of worked on each other's stuff, and especially I forget the song title that Nick was on, but the way that he sang over the riffs that you did in Necronaut for his song was amazing. I just thought it was so unique.
You were breaking. Yeah, I'm trying to get a good. It's like so stupid. I mean, the Necronaut stuff. I mean, he was. We started the studio together at that time, so that was just like super. Like, and same. The first Imperial album was the same time.
Right.
So we've always been like, even when we didn't hang out that much, and I had young kids, and he was in the helicopters and everything, he would always send me stuff and asking for my opinion and all that. So we have always been like very good at like, especially him, like wanting my input or asking my opinion and all that, because he knows that I know what I'm talking about, and I would be honest.
Yeah.
And same goes for him. Like, I mean, the Necronaut album was like, I would never have done that without him.
Right.
Because I would send him, like, as soon as I did something, I would, like, and also, like, come on, like, I'm not a good guitar player. I'm not a good bass player. Decent drummer, but I have a fucking vision. And he would give me really good tips, and he would, give me his opinion straight up. No bullshit. Which is super important.
Right. So, when you were writing these Necronaut songs, a lot of them are towards the slower end of the spectrum, if not, mid-paced. Did you have, like, initially, was it just going to be like a Fred solo project? What turned it into sort of like a Swedish all-star?
Well, it actually started with me, we were writing material for the last Dismember album. We came off a lot of pretty rough tours, and we were like, all right, let's make a new Dismember album. And I had a lot of material, but I felt like when we were rehearsing that, I was like, okay, my stuff doesn't really fit in Dismember camp anymore. Whatever I wrote, I liked. I really liked it. But I felt that it didn't really fit in somehow. And that, along with me feeling that the touring days for me were kind of like, I was not feeling it anymore because it was such a struggle all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all pretty poor. We didn't have day jobs. We toured 2 weeks, 2 weeks off. Toured 2 weeks, 2 weeks off. I handled all the bookings, all that. And I was just kind of burnt out, but I wanted to make new music. And then I felt like my stuff were kind of like a little bit off for Dismember. And we all felt that the next Dismember album would be like, just like old school fucking crushing, So I felt like, maybe it's not so good. So when I quit the band, I asked them, like, do you want any of these songs for the albums? Or for the new album? Like, are you interested in, like, keeping this music and me as a songwriter? And they were like, nah, we're gonna write some new stuff. I was like, okay, cool. And that was good too, because complete honesty, they felt the same way. It wasn't really meant for Dismember.
Yeah.
And I felt like maybe I should do something with this. And then me and Nick were talking again, like just having dinners and talking about new projects. He was like about to quit the helicopters. So we were like, well, and I felt like, well, I have a lot of material. He was like, so do your solo album. I was like, well, yeah, all right. Yeah, I've been thinking about maybe doing an album. He's like, do it. Because I'm going to do a new project. If I quit the helicopters, I'm going to do something myself. Totally by myself. So that was kind of it. And then I felt like, well, I'm not a singer per se. I've never tried to sing like that or anything. So I was like, I can probably pull everything off except for lead guitar and singing. So then I was like, maybe I could get, if I had an idea that, why don't I put like singers on that would fit, because I had material that was everything from kind of doom metal to, Slayer or even Autopsy kind of death metal.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe I should just like, what singers do I know? Chris, I know these people. Why not ask all of them? And most of them came through and were like, yeah, super excited.
Yeah.
So that's just like how it happened, more or less.
Absolutely. And I still put that thing on. I'm wearing the shirt that you gave me.
Nice.
I still put that thing on as like a frame of reference for like inspiration. Just cause
that's nice to hear.
I'm not the sort of dude that like can just sort of hear one thing and just be like, oh, cool. But that, and even though it's not everyone's favorite, but I feel like it was the same sort of thought process. But like the Probot record that Dave Grohl did, because the texture of a song, like the rhythm tracks and the basis of songs might be, cut from the same cloth, but as soon as you add a different vocalist and a different lead guitarist over it, especially in like rock and metal and stuff like that, it just changes the whole texture of the song and I guess like the way that the song like cuts and swings and like that sort of stuff. So as like a palate cleanser or as like a sort of trying to like draw some inspiration of how to merge stuff that at least that I don't know how to put together, like that's always like a cool reference point to me, especially the song After the Void with Joachim from Graveyard on it. Like that one to me was, I remember like, because I had just heard Graveyard like a year before or whatever, and I remember like when the Necronaut album came out and I was just like, there's no way that whatever Fred has written in this music, there's no way you could put those two people together. And I put it on and I was like, wow, fuck, I apparently don't know shit about music because this works perfectly. And
and that's another thing, like, that was kind of funny just about him, because I was like, I need this, I need a kind of a, doomier or more like that type of singer, so I didn't know who, and I was like, Messiah, maybe he should do it, that would be more obvious and everything. And then Nick was like, you should check out Graveyard. I was like, well, I've heard of them, but I haven't really listened to them much. Listened to them, I was like, I really like this. And then I went to see them in Stockholm, and after the show, I was just like, went up to Joachim, I was like, would you be interested in doing this? And he was like, sure. I was like, all right, cool. And I was just like, got him a bus. He took a bus up and he stayed at my place overnight. And he, recorded. I think it was like 1 or 2 takes.
Yep.
And that was the whole thing with all the singers. Like throughout that record, everybody was like, they were super rehearsed, coming in, and most of it is like first or second takes for the vocals.
Wow. I mean, like, honestly, everyone that you got on there is like so good at their game that.
Yeah, exactly. But even I know this, but I knew it, but still, it's kind of like, I was, humbled and impressed by, they're just coming into then it was kind of like a bedroom turned into a studio,
Yeah.
And they just like delivered like that.
That's amazing. That is so cool. And I hope one day, because I don't think you put it out on like a particularly big record label, and it probably didn't get anywhere near as much attention as it should have. But
the label went the label went bankrupt at the same time the record was released.
Oh, was it that Carmageddon record label?
No, it was Regain Records, that Swedish label.
That's right. They did. I remember the Blabbermouth headline about that. Like they're done.
I mean, it did a lot of press for it, everything, but once it came out, the credit for the label was so bad that no one would promote it or even take his records.
Yeah.
No one would distribute it. Well, so I was like, I was fucked as soon as it came out.
Yeah. Well, if Earache Relapse, Nuclear Blast, Century Media is listening right now. Get the
Yeah,
Necronaut record and do it right. That thing will sell itself. Just Jesus Christ. 10 years after, but it'll sell, man. That's a list of names that you could buy a house with. In regards to that, like, I'm always like banging the drum to get the dudes from Death Breath to put the band back together, or like at least like be active with it. And I remember like reading your name in like the credits for that, and I was wondering, just on an offhand question, what your involvement was in Death Breath, because I feel like that's one of the coolest projects ever undertaken.
I agree. It's an amazing album, and I know that the second one is going to be even better because, you know, it's been recorded, most of it, for a long time ago, and I heard it, and it's awesome. But I was not involved in that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I was there in the studio listening to it, you know, as friends, you know. Nick wanted me down there and everything, and then he was like, "Can you do a Tom Araya screen for the first song?" And I did. So wow. That's the only connection with me actually performing or being involved in that record.
That's awesome. Yeah, Scott has played me like one or two little sneak peeks on his car stereo one time, and I was just like, man, I can't believe
it's so good, right?
I can't believe that this thing is sitting waiting. And so I'm always
for so long.
As you know, I'm always like basically like chasing him and Robert with a broom, just going like, dudes.
No, I know, but you know what? It's like when I hung out with Nick in Stockholm in October, I was like, so what's going on now? Now he was like, whoa, actually, do you want to, you know, write lyrics for one of the songs? I was like, yep. Give me the song, I'll do it. You know, so I'm actually going to bring it up again, like next week when we talk. I'm going to be like, dude, send me the song now.
That's awesome. Because I know that Scott's like, over time he's been tinkering around with lyrics, but I'm not sure how far he got with it. But when I was last living in LA, he would try and tempt me to go on these like insane hikes with him, because he was like,
mm-hmm. I remember that.
Yeah, and he would be like, yeah, I listened to the new Death Breath record in my earphones, and you know, maybe I might let you have the iPod, you know, this time when going up the thing, and I'll be like, yeah, and turn up, and he wouldn't have it. I was like, god damn it. So I'd be like dying up this hill, and all he wanted was a hiking buddy. So but good work, Scott, for getting me to fucking do some of these insane hikes. So from there, I guess, the Dismember reunion. Well, actually, let's leave the Dismember reunion a little bit further down. This EP, I went to Japan for the first time last year, and I'd never been, and everyone had always said, like, dude, you're gonna find like records that you dream of, like that you never would have thought. They'll just be like in like a little 7-inch, you know, little bin that you're just flipping through, and you're gonna find the records of your dreams. And I was flicking through, like there was this time, because there's not metal is a thing there, but it's like anvil metal. Mm-hmm.
I know.
They don't give a fuck about like extreme metal and stuff like that. And so I'm just like wistfully like going through, going like, oh man, I hope I can find maybe like an old Metallica record or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm flicking through this little metal 7-inch section, and this thing shows up, and I like my skeleton really jumped out of my skin, you know, and I'm like, are you fucking serious? Is that an original? This has to be like some sort of bootleg. And I remember like taking them up to the counter, and I was like making the dude go on like Discogs and everything, because I couldn't get a reception in the building, and it was so cool to actually like buy that in the wild, you know, like I didn't have to go on like Discogs or like eBay or something to get it, because I try not to do that stuff because I love the thrill of the chase when it comes to that. But this record got you banned in a whole bunch of countries and distros, right? And
Oh yeah.
so what actually happened with that? Because I don't know if I know the specifics behind it, but it'd be cool.
Well, you know, back then, like Nuclear Blast had their distributor in England was Plastic Head, right? So they would ship records from Germany to England, and I think the the customs were looking for drugs in this shipment. I don't know if it was trucks or a boat, whatever it was. They were going through a lot of stuff, and they found like the first album, that 7-inch, and they were like, "What the hell is this? We didn't find any drugs, but this is, this is indecent. Like this is fucked up. Why are people from Germany, like a label from Germany, sending this to England and selling it in English stores?" So they were like, "We're gonna build a case. We're gonna sue Plastic Head and Nuclear Blast and the band." Yeah, so they were like, "All right, this is not okay for English youth to see or hear. So we're gonna sue them." So we were like, "Seriously? We got sued by the English customs?" So we were like, "All right, what's happening now?" And Plastic Head were the first kind of offender in line, I guess. Yeah. Then it was Nuclear Blast, and then it was the band. So they were like, "All right, the band, the distributor, and one representative from the label has to be in court. And you got a court date. You better show up." So we took a plane over, stayed with Plastic Head guys and everything, but they hired a barrister or a lawyer.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, that first meeting was pretty epic though, because this guy, he was really good and he was really funny. And of course, in England, you meet at a pub for a meeting, right?
Yeah.
We were like, okay, and we weren't old. We barely could get into pubs in Sweden. Yep. But in England, they were like, "Oh, fine." Had a couple of pints, and then the barrister or our lawyer said, like, "Well, let's take this meeting to a way more suiting place." So we were like, "Yeah, where might that be then?" We were kind of like, "Oh, is this going to be bad? We're going to sit in a fucking office with a lot of lawyers, and it's going to be horrible." But he was like, no, walk with me." And then he took us across the street, and there was a graveyard or a cemetery. He was like, "This is where we're going to have our meeting." We were like, "Yes, this guy knows exactly what the fuck is going on."
Yeah.
So he was like, "All right, let's sit down." We sat down on a grave and had like our first like meeting about how to, go about the whole trial. So he gave us, some pointers, and like, we had to take all our like piercings out and put our, hair up in a, ponytail and whatever, wear some nice jackets and everything. He was like, "You have to be kind of, you have to look kind of representable, and then we'll see where it goes. But we're going to make sure you're going to get off the hook." And we were like, "Really?" We got to the court a couple of days later, and, the judges were sitting there with fucking, wigs on. We were like, "Really?" 92. We were like, we already saw this on TV, but it was pretty easy. What they did after the initial hearing of, I think they put Matti on the stand for a short while and asking him why he wrote the lyrics and what was the purpose of the lyrics. And he told them that it was a real story about a neighbor that actually killed his wife and skinned her alive in a bathtub in the same house as him. So it was a real story, but he just wanted to put words on a song we had. And then they actually brought out, back then, like a CD player and some speakers, and they played the whole album from start to finish.
Oh, that might be
in
the
front of
best
the
listening
judges.
party ever.
It was so somber, but it was kind of funny when when the vocals kicked in. The lead judge, he was just like he couldn't keep his fucking posture. He was like seriously smirking and almost laughing out loud. But they sat through it, and after that, it was like we had a break. Everybody went out for a pint again. So like us, the customs people, everybody was in the same pub because there was only one pub across the street from the actual court. So we had a pint and everything, came back, and they were like, well, you know what, this is like, it's ridiculous. Like we also, one good point here and that was important, I think, was one guy was called as a witness on our behalf. And this guy was a lawyer, very like, he was a good lawyer, and he was kind of, not a big name maybe, but he was kind of young, but he was, he was kind of big in the game in London at the time, and he loved death metal.
Right.
So he was put on the stand, and he said that, I listened to all these kind of, extreme albums with extreme artwork and everything, extreme lyrics, and I love it. But I'm not, look at me. Expensive suit, like good resume, everything, good cases in his fucking bag, and he was like, this is me. I love this music. I love the message. It has nothing to do with trying to rile people up to do these type of crimes or anything.
Yeah.
So just look at me, and I think that kind of sealed the deal,
That's cool. That's amazing. I had no idea, absolutely no idea that it went anywhere to this level. I thought like you may have just got like a restriction and like, some sort of note back from some sort of customs in a particular country, and I had no idea that all of this existed.
No, we had to go there. We sat through court. And we won. And the best part was, like, when we got the verdict the same day, we were all still in court. And, the guys from Plastic Head, they were just taunting these people from the customs. We won, you motherfuckers. Fuck you. Fuck you and your censorship. It was hilarious. I was laughing all the way back to the fucking car.
That is so awesome. Did you guys have an epic celebration afterwards?
Well, we actually had a showcase show, which was a disaster. Under one of the, I don't even know what that venue was called, but it was in the middle of London under one of the bridges. It was kind of this bunker kind of venue. It was horrible, but not many people showed up. No one cared, but it was fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's just one of the coolest stories ever. Like, and I don't think anyone knows that story outside of probably like a very tight knit sort of Dismember circle, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I hope everyone who's listening in takes that away and just. It's so cool that you ran with it that hard and titled the next record after that whole experience.
Yeah, I mean that gave us more fuel.
Absolutely, and
hence the title.
Yeah, and just the fact that you're like saying stuff like, oh, they made a case number for it and everything, like case number obscene, like that.
Yep.
That's so cool. As the '90s went through, and I saw in like a couple of the Dismember documentaries that you guys did. You guys were like talking about basically like as all the groove metal stuff and I guess Pantera and all that sort of stuff came through, and everyone was like simplifying and like sort of commercializing that sound. Even you guys got lent on to sort of like pull back some of the 10 out of 10 on the HM2 pedals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like trying to deal with people trying to make money out of extreme metal and just kind of wring the soul out of the sound?
Well, one thing that was kind of like you have to realize in like 94, 95 was that not that only like a lot changed. I mean, understandably so, but it was also like Nuclear Blast and Eric and all these labels. They had like they had some of the artists on the charts.
They did, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the metal bands suddenly were in the charts, and that was unheard of before. It didn't happen over here in America, I think, back then, but in Europe, it happened, because the distros and labels were working really hard, like House of Kicks back then, Sound Pollution now, Nuclear Blast, and all their, World of Music were selling tons of extreme metal. And that was a big chain in Germany and the rest of Europe too. So, after this whole ordeal with like extreme covers and extreme music, people were kind of like, all right, Entomb were, kind of breaking new ground too. And to get to these charts and making extreme metal more accessible and, being more popular with kids, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a smart way to go, but it's also kind of like when you play extreme music and you do it for yourself first, right? And at least we did.
Yep.
We were never out to like please anyone before we pleased ourselves.
Yep.
That's always been our case. And I don't think a lot of bands thought that way, but some bands evolved and got more accessible, I guess. We were in that game too. Nuclear Blast were kind of like, well, you should probably, try to be more like Entomb. It's more accessible. It's easier to get your music out there. And we were one of their biggest bands at the time. So, of course, they wanted us to be more successful for us and for them. But it's also like extreme music. Sometimes you cannot really compromise. And that's how we felt, but we a little bit got caught in it, and I have to admit that I was probably the one being kind of like the band leader, also like listening a little bit too much, a little bit too weary, because it's also like when you do your third album and you're trying to live off of your music, you get a little bit anxious and it's kind of hard to know where to turn and all that, and you get a lot of suggestions and people are pulling your sleeve, being like, you should do this, you should do that. We hadn't had that before. No one ever told us what to do. Suddenly they did, and then you're also kind of listening to new music that's coming through, and you don't realize that maybe listening to some music doesn't have to mean you're influenced by it. So that's kind of it's a treacherous path, to try to navigate. And that kind of happened to us when it comes to Massive Kill and Capacity. Also Thomas, our producer, he wanted to be more in charge. He wanted to be the real producer, to tell us like, cut this out, you have to be more tight. You shouldn't be like all over the place. You have to, be more tight as a unit, and you have to make sure the hooks come through first. Don't put 20 riffs into a song, keep it to, make sure the song comes through, and which is a great, it's a great learning experience, and it was for us. And I think it's still vital, and I still think it applies if you want to write music. I don't care if it's death metal or pop music. If it has good hooks, I'm gonna like it, even though I don't really like the music. You know what I mean? It's like, it's very important, and we learned that lesson. But we also learned the lesson that maybe you cannot compromise with your own sound.
Definitely not.
If you're gonna be extreme death metal band, right? So yeah. It was also a struggle to make that album, because it took way longer to record that than anything we had done before. Because then you just like, you went in, you hammered it in, and you were happy at the time, release.
Yeah.
Like the bands did in the 70s, right? That's always been our kind of mindset.
Yeah.
But during that album, it was like it took a lot of time to record it. It was a lot of processing and blah blah blah. You know, pre-production, recording the album, and everything. And I think that album, like Masculine Capacity, is a great album. Has a lot of good songs, but it's also a little bit tame, you know, and maybe not the most extreme. Today I would probably not have told Matti to sing the way he was singing on that album.
Yeah. But you did. You guys did get one gem. You guys got one gem out of it, at the very least, which was Cosmic Garden. I mean, that song in and of itself is just, it's perfect in my opinion, and especially like when you guys played it in more of your regular fashion through the years, like, you know, everything on 10 and everyone going apeshit. The spirit came out of it even more.
Yeah.
So it's just a magic song, and like I still look at that one as like a template along with like I love the Sepultura Chaos AD record, and I look at it I look at Cosmic Garden in the same way as I do like, you know, Refuse, Resist, and like Territory off that record of like going, look, you can make something that has the weight of a bulldozer and a demolition hammer, but it can have the songwriting sensibility of something from the 70s. It's just a verse, chorus, and a solo, and you know.
You're right. It's like, but then like in hindsight, you know, not now, but then, you know, a year later, I felt like we, you know, not that we sold out, but maybe we did what we had to do, but we're not going to go down that path anymore.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna bring that back and go the way we were going.
Yeah.
Initially.
And I think a lot of people can look at that era of time in metal and you know, armchair quarterback it by saying like, fucking, you shouldn't have let people step on you and do all sorts of shit like that, and like, you know, lead the way, and there shouldn't have been anything in terms of like money or like charts or whatever. But it's like, okay, at that time this music doesn't exist, and every step is a uncharted step. You have people for the first time in possibly like around about 8 years of when like metal sort of really started taking its legs. Like, you know, Master of Puppets broke the ground for everything. So, you know, by that time you're getting to like 83, 84, 85. And like, you're all just trying to figure it out too. And you guys are probably only like your early 20s. What the hell do you know about like trying to navigate life and artistry and what's supposed to sound right and where the balance is in terms of like success versus keeping the spirit alive in something. So it's
then, and like you say, you have a label, and then you have other people too, like a management, who everybody's going to be like, whoa, get more successful, it's better for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And when you're, like you say, when you're that young, you're like, all right, yeah, maybe you're right, because we want to live off of the music, and we want to tour more, and we want to get bigger. Not that we're looking to be like a stadium band or anything, still not thinking anything like that, but you kind of, at least me, I know, I don't think the other guys as much, but me, I was like a little bit caught up in it and felt like, well, maybe I should, like, you know, write a little bit more accessible kind of death metal, just to make sure that we get by in a better way and make better. But very shortly after, especially me, but the other guys too, like, nah, this is not what we're doing.
Yeah. I'm glad that you guys like didn't continue down that path, and you didn't go any weirder. Like, it was always from there on in, it was, you could rely on Dismember.
Yeah, and then we turned like 180, and like, but it was also like, you know, black metal was huge at that time, and I mean, that was stealing all the thunder, right? So I mean, we were not doing that great. I mean, no one cared.
Yeah,
but then we instead instead of fucking crying about it, we turned 180 and said like, fuck this.
Yeah.
We're gonna be the fucking Motorhead of death metal. That's our fucking position and our game, and that's where we want it.
I love that.
We want this music to be there, you know.
I love that. That's such a cool motif. You know, as you mentioned, you know, black metal was really starting to. Well, it wasn't really starting. It was like there was just a wave of just insanity at that time, and I don't think people realized how much like death metal fell by the wayside because of all these characters and activities, for lack of a better word, that was happening over in Norway.
Yeah.
Like, what was your view of like that whole circus that was going on, as you're trying to just like literally focus on music and not be a grimlord?
I mean, come on. I mean, we all love black metal from from Venom, and you know, it's not that we knew the guys, we tape traded with guys from those bands. We loved that music. We were into it. It wasn't that we were like shunning it or anything. It was more of a thing that we got kind of like caught up in the whole thing of being like, I don't think us as much as other bands, but when the whole life metal kind of thing came around, we felt like, whoa, wait a minute, we're not fucking life metal, we're fucking death metal, so don't call us life metal.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have that shit. That's for real. We were kind of pissed off about that, but we also realized that like when shit was going down and started to get extreme in certain ways, it seemed to the general public in the metal scene, it seemed way bigger than it was. Those extreme behaviors like burning churches and all that. And I don't like religion in any form, but I think it's kind of stupid to burn down historical buildings. I mean,
yeah.
What the fuck can you gain from that? That's just stupid.
Nothing.
And I still think so. And that was our whole point. But then again, when we released the death metal album, we played in Oslo for the first time in in '93, people put some threats out. When we played in Oslo, nothing happened. And that's when we realized too, like, well, some kind of idiots here are taking this, black metal thing too far and are trying to, threaten people and all that. But the ones doing it are actually some fucking, geeks.
Yeah.
Some fucking little kids that are like, they don't know what they're doing. They just hate their life or whatever position they're in, and they're able to do this, and throwing these threats out left and right. So we were like, it was kind of uncomfortable when Euronymous got stabbed and all that. That was weird, But after that, we were like, it's just bullshit. I don't think we felt like, well, these are some kind of degenerates of that scene that are so like, they're just like probably in a good mental state. So we were more like, well, we can't care less.
Yeah.
We were involved in that scene before these kids even showed up, so fuck you. And then we played in Oslo in '97, and a lot of Necro Butcher showed up, the Satyricon people, everybody showed up at that show.
Mm-hmm. And
everybody was like totally cool. So it was like, all right. By then we knew that like, well, we were right,
Yeah. I can't even imagine how weird it would have got, because I've heard like multiple accounts through time, of people from Sweden and that you guys used to, when all those guys were in like Old Funeral and whatever other death metal bands that were happening in Norway at the time, you guys were like peacefully tape trading with each other and like helping record each other's records and everything. But then once the whole egomania of the Black Circle sort of kicked in, everyone started sort of like being rude to the Swedes. Like, it was more like, we want a piece of the cake and we're going to have to one-up you by like shitting on you essentially. So I remember like being told these stories and I was just like, man, that makes It makes me have like a really bad taste in my mouth about even
No, I know.
the black metal.
It was
that
just
I like.
weird, you know. But we knew that it wasn't like the real people, you know, like Mayhem or Dark Throne. They weren't the ones who were behind, you know, the shit talking or the threats. You know, we knew that, we understood that. But I mean, then come on, like Old Funeral, those guys came to our rehearsal space. I don't know what year that was, 91, 92 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
They came all the way to like the suburb outside of Stockholm to hang out with us when we rehearsed. And I mean, not a lot of people did that.
Wow.
We could have like one like dedicated Italian guy or, you know, that you didn't like knew were coming, and then they just showed up. But these guys, they actually came to a rehearsal space once.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then a couple of years later, you realize that some of these people are actually involved in the not just the shit talking, but actually, you know, committing serious crimes
like that. So, oh my god. Well, yeah, Jesus. To segue to something a little rosier. I guess as you started to figure out that, you know, you really had something going in terms of getting sound to where you wanted it to, I guess other bands like really started sort of taking you on as like, you know, possible like engineer for technicalities and producing their records. You know, you've done everything from like classic At the Gates. I think you worked on the first Helicopters record. You've done stuff with Grand Magus, which is incredible. You worked on the first, I think it's the first Dysphere record. And you even worked on like one of my favorite Necrophobic records. What was, I guess, like the entry point into that? Like, how did other bands like sort of start picking you up to do this stuff? Were they just like stoked on what they heard from the initial stuff that you did, or were you out there like sort of rallying around trying to get work from people?
No, not at all, actually. I mean, since I worked at the Sunlight Studio, I started working there as an apprentice in '93, I think it was.
Right. Okay.
So I talked to Tom. You know, when we recorded with Dismember, I was super into like the whole engineering side of things, and you know, he was kind of happy to have me too, because you know, back then, you know, everything was recorded to tape. The mixing desk you had to mute manually. You couldn't do anything, like nothing was automated at all. So I mean, it wasn't bad for him to have me by his side. I knew the song, so he could, you know, I could help him out when need be. And then he was like, he told me that. I was like, I really love this. He was like, I think you have a knack for this. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I think you really do. You know, it's you have the ears and you have the, you know, you seem to be really into it, which means a lot. So in '93, I think it was like the spring of '93, I asked him, can I be apprentice at your studio? And back then you could get, from the Swedish state, you could get like a monthly of like $600 US dollars per month from the state. If he signed off on it.
Right.
So I did that for 2 years, I think, before they wrote me off, and then I couldn't do it anymore, and then he had to pay my salary. But for the first 2 years, they actually paid my salary.
Wow.
Which was $600 a month.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Not much, but I loved it. But then again, I was there, so it wasn't bad that I was in a band that most of the bands coming in there liked, but also me and Thomas had a good relationship, and I was learning, you know, and he was willing to teach, so that's cool. Just how it went.
That's so cool. Like just because we in countries that had zero, like I'm gonna say that I'm gonna get a lot of like snarky comments, I'm sure, but I mean honestly, like if it wasn't America and Sweden pumping out extreme metal. The rest of the world just all we did was absorb because you guys, both your countries put out all the legendary stuff, and England too. I'm not gonna forget England, but so like all we've ever done is like read these like liner notes, and I don't think like the story of like Sunlight Studios and Thomas has ever been like properly told, but like just now knowing that you were an apprentice there for a few years is absolutely mind-blowing, crazy.
I mean the thing that needs to be told in full that people don't understand is how much traffic was in that studio, because you know that's yeah, I mean it was like 7 days a week,
yeah,
all around the year. It was like no break. Like what, people came in from all across the globe, but you know, back in up until '95, he had a really small space. It was like, I don't know in square feet how big it was, but it was one small recording room, one small control room. That was it. There was like nothing more, and it was like in this house that used to be a housing place for women who had to get out of their relationships, you know,
right.
From the, I think, 30s or 40s. And then they turned everything into, you know, rental apartments. And he shared a space with, he had these two small rooms, and next door was this weaving kind of club. You know, they were weaving kilts, quilts, and whatever. You know, it was kind of weird, but it was like very like low key. And then he managed to get the next two rooms. So we had actually like a kitchen and an office, but that was still not big enough because there were so many bands coming through. We had bands, like I said, like 7 days a week, like all around the whole year. We had that many recordings. So we actually explored opportunity to get like so this was a pretty big house, and Sweden used to have like a bomb shelter in the basement for all rental houses in Stockholm City.
Right.
So this is way below ground. So this whole house was like kind of like a skyscraper, and it was built on top of a hill. So the bomb shelter was like way below ground in this huge rock, right? So he managed to get the landlord to let him transform these bomb shelter rooms into a new studio.
Right.
So we worked on that for a long time. We built everything ourselves. We soundproofed everything ourselves. So it was like you had like two fairly big recording rooms and two small control rooms, a kitchen and a toilet. And then we had like was this fire hatch in one of the control rooms, so you could kind of like crawl through, and it was only like the base of the mountain hill that the whole building was set upon.
Yep.
So you had like the concrete beams and everything, and there we built an office kind of patio. So that's where we put the office. Yes, you had to like kind of like, if Thomas was like doing phone calls or fax, by the time, you know, he was faxing labels or whatever, you had to crawl through this kind of hatch like in the wall. But we had like a good, like we built this, like we had this Mexi brick, like, you know, these thin like bricks, not really bricks, but we built everything like, everything was drywall after we insulated, then it was drywall, and then we put like these half bricks, like we glued everything on top of the, onto the actual drywall. And I remember Grave was one of the first bands that were going to record, and we were going to test the drum room out, which was these brick walls. And the first snare hit, and like 1/4 of all the bricks fell down.
Oh, really?
So we had to re-glue them on the wall. But, you know, it was kind of funny. So we had like one drum room that was kind of like, everything was kind of stone brick walled, and then we had like a wooden room. and then we had like a wooden control room that was like a bit bigger, and then a small control room after that. So. Oh yeah, and one more like padded recording room in between the control room. So yeah, we worked a lot on that, and we did everything ourselves. We even made like two of the recording rooms were like floated, so we put sand in and everything.
Whew. Floated.
Yeah, and still we got complaints from the neighbors. We still got complaints. Yeah.
Wow, that you went to all that trouble to float the rooms, because like it hasn't been until like recent years that I've sort of looked at the concept of what I want to do once I get my own place and build a studio into that. But I didn't realize that you have to like basically remove the floor and put like either rubber or like sand or something in there to like just get all the thing. I was thinking, it probably just matters more about what's going on around the base, but it's a whole lot about the base. The foundation of whatever you build the studio on.
Like the whole grid of the beams on the floor on top of concrete. Then you have to, like you say, like put rubber bumpers on the beams, and then fill everything with sand, and then you have to put like drywall, and then you have to put wood, and then you have to, you keep building.
It's just cool that you guys like built something like that at that time, because I'm sure that was not cheap to do, even if you were doing it by yourselves. Like, it's probably just an absolute nightmare.
He was doing it like recording check to recording check. Like when we did one recording upstairs in that old studio, he got that money in, and he would give me and Anders or Boba Fett, who he also worked there, from the helicopters. He worked there too. He would give us money, like, go to this Home Depot, whatever, and get this. We'd come back, and he'd be like, all right, now we're going to do this. So let's cut these, it took a while. But also, like, a lot of the bands who used to record at Sunlight Studio, they were involved in, like, everybody were doing, like, painting or... helping building. So there were a lot of people helping out.
That's so cool. That it was like a very communal thing where it's like, this guy like paints houses. Maybe he can come do like the paint on the wall or something,
Yeah.
Very, very awesome. Is there any particular particularly funny recording stories or happenings that happened there that you're allowed to discuss on camera?
Well, I remember, we had this band from Argentina recording, and they were like, well, at the time, Sepultura were opening up for Sex Pistols in Stockholm.
Yeah.
So they were on this tour together. If you remember the Sex Pistols reunion tour they did.
Yeah.
So they were playing outside in Stockholm, and these guys from Argentina were like, "Whoa, we've been in contact with Igor from Sepultura, and they're gonna be here, the next couple of days to do this show, and blah blah blah. We're gonna make him come down here." I was like, "Yeah, right." But he did. He actually came down. Yeah, and hung out and listened, and everything. So that was cool, and I met him. And the fun part is that I did a DJ thing like 1.5 years ago here in New York.
Yep.
And so I was spinning records for this show in a separate room from this. Do you know the Knockdown Center?
It rings a bell, but I can't remember ever.
I think it's over in Ridgewood, but
right.
Anyway, so I was hired as a DJ anyways, and then Igor was gonna do DJing after me because he was also, performing, helping out one of the bands, playing some drums and shit. And the fun part was that he came up to me, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna DJ." I was like, "Yeah, I'm Fred, blah blah." He's like, "Okay, cool." I was like, "Well, you probably don't remember this, but I used to work in the Sunlight Studio in Stockholm. You open up for the Sex Pistols and everything." He was like, "No."
Just flat like that.
No, he was super nice. But I was like hoping that he would remember. But then again, come on, it's like, how would he? But it was kind of funny. And then I was like, all right, so I'm gonna turn this DJ set over to you. And I had my vinyls and everything, like playing only vinyl records. I was like, so do you want me to hook up everything for you? I mean, I left everything up if you want to bring your records, whatever. He was like, I got this. Just a USB. And then he started playing some dance music, and I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. Nice to meet you again.
Because that's
like
the
no
thing
shit
now,
talk, but I was just like, I didn't expect that. I was playing, Rainbow Slayer and stuff, and he came in and it's just like USB.
No,
it was like, nah, it was just like.
That's his thing. Like, he faded out of like Sepultura, and he got way into like electronic music, and it's
no, I hate that kind of music, but still, what a great drummer, dude.
Yes. I mean, like, his drumming on Beneath the Remains will forever like haunt my thought process.
Come on, he influenced me. I mean, come on, the Morbid Visions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and
even though that was early on, I mean, that was like a main influence for me as a drummer.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, his power behind what he did, there was like no hesitation.
Exactly.
He kept everything pretty tight. Even I'd be guessing like they had next to no budget on those records at all. So just that pure talent. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's an amazing story. And I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do want to ask the question about you guys. I guess across like your multiple DVDs have always said you were the most unluckiest band that could have ever possibly toured. What would you say is like, I don't know, 1 to 3 of the most ridiculously unlucky stories that people can take away? Well,
we can take it like pretty early on. We were supposed to open up for Morbid Angel in '91. Mm-hmm. We just released like an Overflowing Stream, and Nuclear Blast are like, "Whoa, we can pay for you guys to open up for Morbid Angel." Like, okay, cool. And Unleashed were supporting them on the first leg of the tour, right, in Europe. We were supposed to take over because they had to go on to work or whatever. I don't remember exactly why, but so Century Media and Nuclear Blast came to an agreement that Unleashed were going to support Morbid Angel for the first leg of the tour. Dismember is going to support them for the second leg of the tour in Europe.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, so we take the train down, and we don't know anything. Nuclear Blast are like pretty green at this time too. So we took all the backline we could borrow from friends and got on a train, a night train to Berlin, right?
Yeah.
Gonna get picked up. And we're like crammed into this whatever, sleeping coupe, whatever, on a train with all this gear, like could barely fit all of us with the gear. Get off the train, get everything off the train, and the tour manager with this small camper is like, where are we going to fit all this stuff? We don't have a trailer. We're like, what? Okay, fine. So we're like, all right, we cram everything in the back of the fucking camper, and it's like the band and the driver, also tour manager, and then Patrick, who was in the Harmonic Orchestra, was also with for the ride just to help us out.
Yeah.
And we start traveling from Berlin we stayed a couple of days in Berlin, and then like, all right, first show is in Austria somewhere. I don't remember what city. We show up, and there's no one there. The place is closed. The club is closed. We're like, what the fuck? And our tour manager gets on the phone and like, blah, 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 blah. All right, it was the wrong city. We got the wrong information. So Morbid Angel played without us. Oh, Sadus was also on the bill.
Right.
Not to forget. So it was like supposed to be Dismember, Sadus, Morbid Angel.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, oh man, what the hell? But then we get the information. Go to Graz in Austria. So we showed up there the day after, and great, Morbid Angel is there, Sadus is there. And of course, we don't get enough time to sound check or anything. Everything is chaotic, and we played for like 10 minutes.
Wow.
And then we're like, you guys get off stage, you know. So that was kind of like, and then the same day, Sadists were like, we're going home, we're done. They took off, and then we toured for another week with only us and Morbid Angel. But that was so typical back in the days, you know, like you had such poor information to show up and like, sorry, there is no show going on here.
Oh my god. So I can't even like fathom the idea of like trying to tour without the internet or a cell phone. Like,
right?
It must have just been hell. Like public phones.
Yeah, it was
trying to find
it was
like
pretty
some
hard,
cash.
but it was cool. But once you played, it was awesome. I mean, on that tour too, we played in Napoli, and this is a good one. So both our camper and Morbid Angel's camper are like pulling up to this place, and it's kind of like this big round building, and it has no roof whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And we all walk in, and it's like this pizza place with a stage in the back. And I remember David Vincent going like, well, guys, you know what? If this is the place, this is not the place. We're like, we never heard it before. It's like, you play or you play. Just no matter what. Like, you play. You know, we played youth clubs and whatever up to that point. We didn't know much. But he was like, this is not the place. And then they were kind of like, we're not going to play here. So the owners were like, whoa, no, you have to play. You have to play. You have to play. You know, we have guests.
Yeah.
People were sitting around eating pizza and pasta. And they had to go up and like do a sound check, and they were like not loving it. So David told me like, well, you know what, Pete is not, he's I think they had hotels. He was like, he's not here, so can you go up and do a sound check for him? And I was like, yeah. I was like, well, scared, you know, all these people sitting there eating, just looking at me like
who are these maniacs? What the hell are they doing?
It was pretty horrible.
That is incredible. I think one time I read in an interview like someone, I mean, the HM2 pedal that you guys use is, you know, vital to your sound, but somewhere on the tour, someone lost like a whole bag or like a whole case of like the pedals that everyone uses on stage. And what was that like? If you can remember.
I don't really recall that. I remember like backdrops being lost, drum stuff. I mean, of course, pedals been lost, and you know, even personal stuff been lost. But I can't recall like if we had like a bunch of those HM2s that got lost. I don't think so.
Wow. Well, that's good.
Yeah, right. But there is a dark. We call it dark cloud.
A dark cloud. That follows
it's
Dismember?
The dark cloud. I mean, you know, the Dagger that the band we have, we even wrote a song called Dark Cloud because that's how we always felt. Like,
absolutely.
And, you know, it's always been, and the Necronaut album, I was like, all right, I'm not in Dismember anymore. Maybe I'm off the Dark Cloud, but what happened? Like, the album didn't even get out.
Oh my god, that's amazing. All right, yeah, I think we might leave it there because I mean, cool. there's a gazillion other questions that I could ask, but hopefully down the line we can do a part 2 or something like that. But it's been so awesome talking, and like, you know, we haven't had a conversation like this in a few years, which is,
I know,
it's so cool. So I'm forever grateful that you have taken the time out tonight, because I'm sure it's like fucking like 12 o'clock right now. So
I'm the happy guy here. You know, it's like not only being isolated, but you know, it's like good to see you.
Yeah,
great to see your face.
It's great to see your face.
You know, good to talk to you.
Yeah.